Hi, this is Brian Fogarty, and this is a video for Chapter 13 of the book Quantitative Social Science Data with R, second edition. And in this video, we're going to do is look at odds ratio interpretation for Logit, binary Logit regression model. So, as I mentioned in the previous videos, we cannot directly interpret the coefficient sizes, the actual coefficients from Logit and probit regression. We could figure out if it's statistically significant based, on standard error as well as direction, but we can't do a direct interpretation like we can for linear regression. So we're going to look at odds ratio here. This is a technique for interpretation. We can only use odds ratio with Logit models, not probit models. And so odds ratio is going to give us, it tells us the odds of an event occurring compared to the odds of it not occurring. So people like this because of odds from gambling, although the odds of how we talk about here is not the same thing as, if you're betting on a game or something like that. It's not the same thing, but it kind of gets the same idea. All right. So how we do this in R is actually very, very easy. In terms of the code. So all we have to do is we are going to take the exponential of the Logit coefficient. So we can do them individually, but we can also do all of them that are in a model by using the saved coefficients that's saved in our model. So our model is model.logit. So we're going to do them all at once. All right, so we use the exp for exponential. All right, we're going to do model.logit and then $, and then coefficients. And then we're going to include this option. You don't have to. In square brackets, we're going to do -1. All that does is that it gets rid of the constant or intercept. Just because we don't care about it. All right. Let's highlight that and run that. Okay, so these are the odds ratio values. So we're going to do interpretation as odds ratio, and then we're going to do one that's odds ratio as a percentage, which I think the as a percentage is way more intuitive, just because there's some funky language we have to use with odds ratio, the sort of regular. Okay, so we look at this and you're like, okay, what are these values? So odds ratio are bounded from 0 to, I guess technically infinity. So we can't have a negative odds ratio value. That doesn't make sense, right? Because that's like saying this is so not going to happen that the odds are negative. Like, that doesn't make sense. So, any odds ratio value that's 1, that equals like exactly 1, is, you might say, even odds. That would be, though, from a coefficient that's 0. So a coefficient that's 0 is also known as a constant. So we are not going to be interpreting that, because if a predictor is not statistically significant, we do not do a interpretation of the coefficient. All right. An odds ratio value that is greater than 1 is a positive effect. So it's sort of increasing odds, greater odds, something like that. An odds ratio value that's below 1, so point something, is a negative effect. So that would be decreasing, less, some terminology like that. All right, so I'm actually going to, so I go through how to interpret these. I'm going to type one of these out, just so we're all on the same page. The nice thing with odds ratio is that we can start out the interpretation like we do for linear regression. Here we have, I guess these are all, so Scott and Trust are ordinal, age is, technically ratio, but there's order to it and a bunch of values, right? All right. So we can start this out just like we would a linear regression. So I'm just going to do for the Scott one. So for a 1 unit increase in Scottish identity. All right, so that could be the, would be the same kind of standard thing if we were using linear regression. All right, the odds of voting yes. Okay, so this is in reference to our outcome variable, which is people's planned vote, which I know is a weird language. I've just been saying like voting yes, voting no, but planned vote for the Scottish referendum in 2014. All right, so the higher category is yes, the lower category is no. So the odds of voting yes, all right, so for a 1 unit increase in Scottish identity, the odds of voting yes increase, because it's above 1, right, increase by a factor of 1.145, and 45 is rounded. All right, so this is the part that can get a little weird, by a factor of. Okay, I find that people have trouble understanding that. So that's why actually, again, I like to use a percentage because I think it's more intuitive. So let's look at how to do it as a percentage. So we're just going to create a new chunk, and what I'm going to do is steal this. So we're just going to do a little math on this. All right. So to get the odds ratio as a percentage, we have this. This is from before. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to put a open parenthesis at the very beginning, and then after our existing last closed parenthesis, we're going to do -1. Okay, and then we're going to multiply by 100. So what we do is we subtract 1 from the odds ratio value and then multiply it by 100. Okay, so now that is, you can see, I think it's easier to see the positive one. So if we took 1.45, subtracted 1, then we'd be left with 0.448, etc. Multiply it by 100, that moves decimal point 2 spots to the right, and we have 44.85. Okay, so the interpretation now, and I'm going to steal this just so I don't have to type all of it. All right, now the interpretation for Scottish identity would be, for a 1 unit increase in Scottish identity, the odds of voting yes increase by, let's round it, 45%. Okay, that's it. I think that's more intuitive to understand than saying the odds of voting yes increase by a factor of 1.45. Right, here it's the odds of voting yes increase by 45%. Okay, that's it for this. It's, I think it's important to get the language right when we do these interpretations, because they're, sort of technical. This is how we interpret it. So sometimes people have to get, just play around with it, get some experience doing it. And then normally what we would do after we do an interpretation like this, we'd also include some sort of discussion, some quote-unquote plain language discussion, trying to say, which we could say here, like people that feel more Scottish are more likely to vote yes to Scotland becoming its own country. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that is it for this video about odds ratio interpretations with binary Logit. All right, so thanks for watching. See you next time.